Oh, was young. Okay, so preventive, we mean we want to put in place measures that are targeted at preventing, right? Preventing, this one, right? Then anticipatory, we are anticipating that there will be a disaster one day. So what do we have in store from the fund, right? Then, oh, technology happened. Here we are. Old MacDonald, they farm. Respond to it. Old MacDonald, they farm. Old MacDonald, they farm. Right, I'm your teacher today. Let me tell you one thing. There's nothing called here, oh. Do you know that? It's here we are, oh. Have you learned something? You have learned something, right? Clap hands for me. So we now want public interviews for the members of this board. Remember? We are saying this is a public board. So we want these people to be publicly interviewed by the Parliament of Zimbabwe, seconded by the people of Zimbabwe, the citizens themselves. They say, we want Mr. J.T. Guma to represent us. And I go there and represent them. Is that so? As opposed to them being picked by somebody who is seated somewhere in the office, who doesn't know what is affecting the people of Chiri, the people of Chirez, the people of Mcheke, the people of Maara, Kwamuzenda. Understand that? Right? Then, the board should also be inclusive. That emphasis is mine. We want the board to be inclusive, which means people with disabilities, the women, the youths, they should be included in that board, so that we bring on board all the issues to do with women, children, people with disabilities, and other interest groups. Are we together? Then, we also need to have regional representation in that board. Why regional representation? Because the issues from Masvingo are best known by the people from Masvingo. Issues from Manika Land are best known by the people from Manika Land. So we want the board to be inclusive, so that when we are disbursing funds, our funds disbursement is informed by ideas and decisions that come from Masvingo, Manika Land, Gweru, Midlands, and so on. Then there should be prioritization based on needs assessments, not just giving out money from nowhere, without scientific research, without being informed by data and statistics. We want that fund to be disbursed and distributed in accordance with scientific analysis of issues and data which is at hand. Then be comprehensive when dealing with issues so as to make a lasting effect. We don't want the fund to be said, let's say we are in Chibi, then you give to one ward, you go to Chirezi, you give to another ward, you go to Mwenezi, you give to one ward, and so on. Once you do that, it means the development or the level of impact of that fund will not be felt in that district. It will take longer for you to realize the development you want. We need to channel funds towards education accessible in all formats and building resilience against climate change. When we are saying in all formats, we want education that is inclusive. Inclusive education, we mean the education should be accessible to each and every person in Zimbabwe. Be it somebody who did not even go to school, they should be able to know that climate change is upon us. And what does climate change mean? Be it somebody who is blind, who cannot see with a visual impairment, they should know that there is climate change. How? Through our education, which is funded by the board. technology is happening again. Next slide. Who is validating this one? Oh yeah. Also, special provision should be made for accessing funds for those that are most vulnerable. That is people with disabilities, women, youths, etc. End of thinking capacity. They said you should speak in English. Can you come again?
We have jumped.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I was exercising. By jumping, I was trying to exercise. Anyways, allocation of funds towards research and development in the impacts of climate change by sector. So, by this point, we mean we need to allocate funds for the purpose of research, focusing on sectorial needs. Let's say we are in education, primary and secondary education. Let us allocate funds for the purposes of the education of our children from ECD up to A level. When we are talking about higher tertiary education, we also want that fund to be disbursed according to the needs of the universities, polytechnics, and so on. There should be minimum requirements in order for an authority to get funding. Right, here we are saying, if it is CBRDC that requires funding, it should not be just cut a blank check to say, okay, there's funding here, Chibi come and collect. No. There should be requirements, minimum standards for you to meet. As a proposal, we propose, we want to do this project. These are our proposals. We want to do A, B, C, D. Then that proposal is also approved. Then you get your funding. Non-partisan budget allocation. The issue of politics. Yeah, I can see you are now sleeping. I'm a bit boring, I know. But please pay attention here, because I will ask questions. And this is my class after all. I'll beat up people who do not respond to my questions. So, non-partisan budget allocation, we're talking about politics in the allocation of these resources. Once we consolidate our resources, we are expecting that we give resources to the most deserving projects or situations. We allocate resources independently, right? Then indirect funding of projects towards the reduction of greenhouse gases to be exempted from import duty. I don't know, there was somebody who was talking about carbon credits and technology used in reducing carbon, whatever. So we are saying the import of those equipments should be exempted from tax. Taxation, our tax brackets should not cover the importation of such equipment. Then we are talking of special provision should be made for accessing funds for those that are most vulnerable. I think this is self-explanatory. We are saying people with disabilities, women, youths, they should be given special treatment when it comes to accessing these resources. Then I'm going to principle number 8. Here there is an issue from, we want the change, be inclusive, and say persons with disability, gender, and mainstreaming. From the word go, let us be inclusive of disability. Then include all people with disability, taking into cognizance of their abilities. So here we are saying, while there is inclusion of people with disabilities, let us also be cognizant of their abilities. It's not like we just want somebody to be there in the board or in any decision-making board with regards to climate change for the purpose of them being that they are disabled. But we want them to be there on merit. Amongst themselves, they have the capacities. Let them select each other and they bring somebody of competence. Then issues of persons with disabilities and gender perspective in climate change, planning, policy formulation, including the different experiences of people with disabilities, men and women, into design, implementation, monitoring and evaluation of policies and programs. This is a change from what we've been provided for previously on the title of this principle. So we are proposing that we change again that content. Then we have a quota system in the participation of these interest groups. So I say if there is a board that is set up maybe at district level, that board should also include a person with disabilities or persons with disabilities, women and youth, right? Then alignment of the climate change. From my head I can't. From my head I can't. Alignment of the climate change bill with the disability policy. So we are saying there's already a disability policy that is in place, and I'm sure there's a draft legislation on disability that is also before the parliament. We want this document to be also in line with the disability policy, so that whatever that is provided for in the disability policy is also enshrined here. Why not clap hands for me? I said I'm from Masvingo, and I have said enshrined. Come on, guys. We can do better. Anyways, emphasis on emergency provisions for people with disabilities. Remember the Cyclone Idai, Cyclone Elin, and other disasters. Now we need to emphasize on the provisions for people with disabilities, women and children, and various groups that are disadvantaged, so that when we are providing for something, they are also catered for. Remember, when I building your new buildings after the cyclone died, some did not have disability-friendly structures, such as ramps and so on. We want them to be also included on those provisions. Then provide for equal opportunities for men and women. This is coming from gender mainstreaming. We are saying there are programs that should be done catering for women. There are programs that can be done catering for men. So when you are programming, let us make sure that we are catering for both men and women. Let us cater for Adam and cater for Eve. There being no questions, ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of my presentation. I know we don't have any questions because we're not listening. Do we have questions, or I should sit down and say?
Thanks so much. Maybe I can take over from now so that you won't intimidate them from asking you questions. All right, thanks a lot. Let's give me a round of applause. Right, thank you very much, Group A's, Group 4. So what we will do, this was interesting. But then before I move to Group 3, I just want to share with you one suggestion from another group that I want you to digest before we discuss it later on and see whether we go with them. Can you come back to Principle 8, where it says gender mainstreaming in climate change. So Group 4 proposed changing to persons with disability and gender mainstreaming. One province proposed that we add it to gender mainstreaming and inclusiveness in climate change. So now we have two proposals. It's unfortunate that the other group is not here. So I'm sharing with you, then we see if we can agree in here to say which one can we go with. Right? Is that clear? Yeah, just something to digest, because if we complete the round of consultations with one principal title with 3 proposals in terms of its weighting, then it might be difficult then to choose one and try and get some bridging sort of title. So it's just something to digest. If we feel strongly that we should maintain the Masvingo proposal, it's fine. We'll then have another consultation around and say which one is fully reflective and representative of all constituencies, right? Dijon. Thank you so much. So this one, because it says we want to change to persons with disability and gender mainstreaming. Another province proposed gender mainstreaming and inclusivity. Amending the same. So I just thought maybe I should just raise it. While we listen from to group 3, 2, and 1, we think about it as we discuss, then we come back to it and say, how best can we find something that satisfies all constituencies. Thank you so much. So let me take this opportunity to invite group 3 while group 2 prepares. I'm not sure which one is coming to represent group 3. Oh, it's the 2 people are coming up. So again, you introduce yourself and take us through the presentation.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
It's good to see you. Okay, my name is Virginia John. So I'm representing Group 3, Strategy and Group 3. I'm just reading what you're writing. Principle number 4, establishment of DNA, designated national authority. The bill should ensure that the communities are not deprived of the benefits from the natural resources. Let's go. What we're saying on this point is that if the project comes to our community, a natural resource project, the community, the people who are living in that community should benefit from that project in particular. Not really people are relocated because there is a certain project which is coming in the community. No, we don't want that. Before awarding a project, there is need to have a community consultation and stakeholder engagement. This helps in community having a sense of ownership and sustainability. This is clear. Maybe adding on that, but if the people have the sense of ownership towards a project, it becomes easier for the project implementers. The benefits should be clear and tangible. The benefits of the projects. The national authorities should also have cultural, ethical considerations. On this one, we were saying, if you go to a certain place, a certain area, which have their own ethical consideration, ethical or their cultural values, the project or the project implementers, I can say that they are not supposed to bring their own culture. For example, giving an example, in our field, they say, I'm going to a conference. For example, just example, you get the sense of what we're trying to say. Women conference, then you go there covering the event, wearing a trouser or a miniskirt. If you're getting me. So, as project implementers, you should consider these people. They might be provoked against their technician. Next slide. Continuing, communities that are already preserving forests should be incentivized. Yeah, they should get incentives from the projects. They are supposed to benefit a lot from these projects. The mandate of the designated national authority board should be clear. It should be decentralized and well represented. The DNA should include technical experts in the department. The DNA the DNA to ensure establishment of the local auditing firms. I think the DNA must ensure establishment of the local auditing firms. Then, training and awareness sessions should be mandatory. The DNA board should work hand in hand with EMA to avoid duplication of objectives and responsibilities. Then the DNA should have technical entity that analyzes the cost-benefit analysis. The board should be a stand-alone with its own management and structures. This is clear, Mr. Paul. The communities are supposed to derive utility, which is better than what they have been benefiting. The benefit sharing and bragging percentages, where there is monetary value, time frame of sharing, should be clear and rightful use of, and ensure rightful use of the funds. The DNA should have monitoring mechanism. I think as group 3 at time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. No, I related it when she talked about the ethics and everything. Yeah, so it's coming together. Anyway, thanks so much. Can you group 2? Psyching up, yeah? Who's coming for group 2? What will you do? Yeah. All right.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Temba is my name, and I'm representing Group 2. And basically, Group 2, what we noticed is that the legislation is well done. Kudos to the team that did it. And because it's well done, we've got just a few issues that can be implemented to make it even better. So generally, what we looked at was on general issues. Number one, we need to raise awareness. The legislation needs to have a mechanism of raising awareness on general issues relating to climate change, such as your greenhouse gases, global warming, issues relating to causes and effects of climate change, among others. We noticed that as you were talking, there is a lot of technical jargon, which if you present it to even organizations that are supposed to implement, they find themselves, at 6s and 7s. So we need to raise that awareness, number one. And number two, we need to define the mechanism of raising that awareness within the legislation as well. Are we going to use schools? If so, how? Are we going to use traditional leaders? If so, how? Universities, colleges, etc. So we also need to include all categories or all groups of people there, as has been alluded to earlier on. Let's simplify the language that we are going to use in this awareness and in the legislation as well. We do not want to end up hiring lawyers to interpret the things that we need to be reporting to. So we need to know what we need to report, when to report it, how to report it, using which instrument. And talking about reporting, let's look at the framework in general. Number one, we need to make sure that we capacitate those that are going to report. The legislation should provide for that. We don't start by using the whip. Let's first of all capacitate them. No, they should know how to report, what to report, using which instruments and which figures. That's number one. And number two, the bill needs to clarify the roles and responsibilities of this reporting. Company X, what is it supposed to do? The authority, the CCMD, what is it supposed to do, and who is supposed to verify that? And it should also classify, categorize, and group in entities according to their capabilities, capacities, and their revenues in general. Even when it comes to the mitigation of this climate change, let's make sure that we know what Mr. Ndlovu at his rural home there in Spezini has to do. What does Tongat with this capacity has to do? How do they report and so forth and so on? So let's provide for those categories. We won't want a situation whereby only those that are considered to be, big companies report and mitigate against climate change, while those that are small do not do so. If we are to look at our economy in general, legislation you have to show who does what, where, and how using what. The bill also should clearly define the institutional arrangements for reporting, enforcement, and verification, including possible provision for climate change inspectors. At times I might report and appear to be good, while all that I'm doing is, showing face without really doing what is right. So we need that enforcement there to be clearly outlined in the legislation. And then we also realize that there might be some institutions that are really contributing significantly to climate change, polluting seriously, but they are not being monitored and enforced. So we need to have sort of a 1, 2, 3, 4. What have you done to sort of help them out? On the penalty side, before we even talk about penalties, we thought the legislation can actually do better by incentivizing those that are doing well, give a good carrot over and above the finances that are made available. Those incentives can be through tax rebates, improvement plans that can actually easily access the climate funding in the local and international market. We also talked about setting of these penalties. They should also be considerate to the size and capacities of the companies, and these penalties should also be punitive. We should make sure that people would rather comply than pay the penalty and continue causing climate change. And we said initiatives for climate change mitigation, including the penalties and so forth, they should not, thwart development. We talked about sustainable development. Its classic definition is the development that meets our demand without compromising the future generations from doing so. So let's make sure that even this act makes sure that we meet our demands. We develop, we are very underdeveloped, we need to continue to develop. Measurements, on the measurement side, the bill should also ensure that standard measurement methods are provided for, and the equipment required for these measurements is clearly defined. Where calibration is required, it needs to be, specified in the legislation, and the calibrators also, they need to be regulated there, so that the reporting is consistent, the measurement is standard, and we get the right output out of it. And the obligation to purchase carbon credits, which is what we have been talking about. If company X is not able to meet its threshold, before it is allowed to go out to purchase carbon credits, let us consider, capacitating them, assisting them to meet their threshold. How can we do that? CCMD might consider to use part of the climate fund to come down there to company X and help them to mitigate against climate change. If it's emissions, they come down there, they put in, the right technology, we reduce the emissions to what it should be. And if we do so, this will help all of us. And that can be done on a cost recovery basis. And then talking about standards, let's not just develop standards from nowhere. Let's make sure that the companies that produce are also consulted. These thresholds allow for development, and the emission standards should be managed under one house. We won't want a situation whereby the Environmental Management Agency monitors emissions on one side, and the Climate Change Department also monitors the same emissions. If we could put all of them in one house, it will help us all. And then these emission standards should be sectorized. It should not be one size fits all. Chemical industry should have its own, agriculture industry its own, and so forth and so on. And there are some sectors which by nature has to produce some emissions. We need to legalize those. There I just put legalize burning. Don't ask me where I'm coming from, but we need to legalize that one. Talking about carbon credits for defaulters, I think I've talked about the first one. Defaulters should either purchase carbon credits to offset the excess emissions or pay a greenhouse gas emission levy. This is what our legislation is saying, and we are saying first option, CCMD should come and assist to rectify as a cost recovery basis. And the purchase of those carbon credits should only be done when all other options have been exhausted. Okay, so why were we showing all that? It is because we want to develop as a nation. We still want to be able to eat. So that's the classic of the sustainable development. I thank you.
All right, thank you. I like this group. Next time I'm going to go into a group, I should join this one. Yeah. I won't say it recent. Yeah. I'd rather keep it myself. Huh? All right. Yeah, it's getting interesting. Group one. Where's group one? Oh, okay. Group two was claiming for you while you were coming up. So I was like, where are you group members? Eh? You also contributed. That's nice.
Okay. Thank you. Got the building principles which I'll be talking about. So I'll just be going through. So generally, I was saying that these principles should also be considered and applied in the bill. So there's need for a scientific evidence that is with specific targets on all issues contributing to climate change. That's the first point. The second point is the bill should be inclusive of all groups of people in society, as well as individuals with disability and the mentally those people that are also having some mental issues. So that should also be inclusive of all those in the society. Also, we should be having the ethno-science aspect being considered in the bill. Education also, both formal and informal. The how part, how are we going to do it? I think that has been touched on a number of times in the presentations, as well as the mitigatory issues that also needs to be coming out. The issues of transparency and accountability also should be coming out, and yeah, the solutions on climate change that we provide or that are coming from the global interactions and the efforts being done by various countries. We should be looking at each solution and saying that how does it impact us at the end of the day? Does it have short-term, mid-term, and long-term impact, for instance, to our health? How is it going to affect us? For instance, I can give an example of the fertilizers that we are using. We can be saying that these are environmentally friendly solutions, but then what effects do they have on the health? So yeah, the next point, community participation on adaptation and mitigation as well should also be considered. The issue of just transition approach should be considered. Changes must be done sustainably and gradually. Not to say that we have Wangi that is using coal, and then the bill just states that all companies that are using coal should stop. And that is not a just transition approach. We look having a lot of people that will be losing jobs, so that's something I think that we should consider, the just approach. Then also we should include the hazardous substance disposal. I think this is something that we may also need to consider and say that we have got some areas where we do dump hazardous substances, and how are these going to affect in relation to global warming? Do they have an effect? If so, then what are we going to do? And if etc., I will not explain much. I think I will leave that to questions and contributions. Then principle number 2, that is the mainstreaming of climate change in development and planning and the budgeting processes. So these are just the points that we came up with. The first one, climate change issues should be incorporated in feasibility studies. Community benefits in climate change projects should be visible. If a company is to do something to the community, then it should be visible. It should be transparent. Then research, innovation, and technology advancements should be continuously done every now and then. We do have probably we can have investments being done in relation to hydraulic power stations, but then the world studies will be saying that rainfall patterns are decreasing. Maybe in 20 years we'll be having so much rainfall patterns, and that will also affect our lakes and rivers. But we are just continuing to invest in power stations, hydraulic power stations, and then at the end we'll find that we no longer have water. So we need that continuous assessment. Then the bill should gazette a certain percentage from the budget to go towards climate change projects. I think this is all that came from the group. That's group 1. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much to all the presenters, group 1 to 4. I think now we can open for discussion. Any additions? Or you want to drop some of the proposed contributions? Of course, with justification. You just don't say let's drop this one. With an idea and you feel that should not be added, then you need to justify and you agree. I hope we're noting out all our issues that we want to contribute to the discussions now. So this is the time to share them. I noticed other principles, there was issues around training, awareness, and maybe while they were presenting on principle number 2 on climate change mainstreaming, maybe we can pull all those issues around awareness, training, then they are incorporated under this principle, right? Is that an agreeable way forward? Yeah, thank you. I'm not it's supposed to be roving mine. Oh yeah, I see 2 hands now. Yeah, start from there, come, you see. There's a gentleman in the way. So I'll start here while you're moving. That's it.
Okay. All right. My name is Vital Mutinat from Ministry of Energy and Power Development. It's just a suggestion or addition of, in as much as we would like this thing to be, we want the bottom up approach. This view, yes. Yes, this view. Yeah, thank you so much for the correction. Yeah, so we also should bear in mind that this view is about climate change. These funds are climate funds. We should not take them as developmental funds for other, because some of the points, they were somehow deviating from the purpose. Like we should not talk of building schools with funds. We want such a thing. They should be channeled towards climate mitigation strategies and all. Yeah, that was my
your contribution. Thank you so much. Yeah, just saying as one of participants, just say, yeah, this has to be climate related. So even if when the fund is operational, unless there's clear climate rationale, it might be difficult to support some of the initiatives, because now you need to separate between developmental initiatives, those we can do with maybe our resources from devolution and other sources. But then for you now to access this, it should also have a clear link to climate change. If it's a school, maybe it has been damaged by a tropical cyclone, then you then say, this will need to have that information, say because of this tropical cyclone during this season, then the school was damaged, so much casualties, it will need so much. As part of maybe what you are going to do, then we also propose additional measures. It's not just reconstruction, but that incorporates climate change considerations, right? So that there's that link to climate change, that once we are done with that intervention, should we experience another similar magnitude event or slightly more, then we should, that piece of infrastructure should still remain intact. Yeah, so that's how it works. But we take note, and thanks for also speaking on behalf of the department on that one. There was another hand, then we come.
Just a follow-up on that.
Okay.
Sorry?
Oh, sorry, it's a follow-up, so let's allow it.
Follow-up on that. I'm not sure whether the instrument is there to ring-fence the funds. Because what we have seen, Aaron, on that. Because what we have seen is we end up in the discussion. Okay? And then you cannot really separate and say this is the benefit coming out from this effort. I'm not sure whether there's such a mechanism. Or the money would be pulled into
Okay, thank you. I think with regards to that one, I can try and respond. I think there's growing awareness. Just this morning we got a call from one of the chief directors in finance saying now they are developing the budget strategy paper. So they actually want us to provide them maybe half a page or a paragraph, just brings to the fore climate change issues. What should we prioritize, even as maybe ministries, departments, and agencies go into budgeting space? And also the good thing, even our policymakers, they're also engaging in other platforms where climate financing is discussed, and they're also learning from other success stories like in Rwanda and everything. So I think once this one was the good thing, why the national laws require a fund to be anchored on a statutory instrument or an act of parliament, is to try and influence that fund. So that if it's based on the Climate Change Management Act once approved, then if someone then says this cannot go into the fund, but it goes into treasury, then I think someone can take that institution to court and say you are violating this piece of legislation. And I think also through Parliament, through their oversight role, because good things, climate change impacts are felt at the very local level. So they face these things on a day-to-day basis. If there is a drought, we call the MP, right? If there's a flood, we want to see how the MP is coming to mobilize support. So in their oversight role, I'm sure they also push for that. And in all engagements we've had with Parliament, I think they are fully in support of the idea. So we hope it will remain like that for the foreseeable future. Thank you. Over to you, sir. Oh. Sorry? Can you come again?
Early in the morning, there was the allocation of funds for carbon credits. And there were percentages that were actually laid out, about 15% going to government, 10% going to local authority. I was wondering, because you said the bulk of those funds should go towards benefiting the communities. Who will be representing the communities?
Okay, thank you. So let me give the colleagues who are working directly on these things to explain the process.
We will be representing the communities. This is why we are here to discuss what is the best modality of community representation. Should it be the local authority, the RDC, or should it be the urban council if in the case of an urban area? How do we ensure, given our experiences in the past and given other programs in the environment sector that have been implemented like Campfire and so forth, what's the best way forward? How do you think it should be done? In the statutory instrument that we are currently using at the moment, from August last year, the statutory instrument says of the monies that are collected by government, 55% will go to local communities. But it does not specify how that is going to happen, because we are still waiting for this bill to come through and for the National Climate Fund to actually specify how that should work. So this is part of the consultative process. We need your ideas on how best we can implement this.
All right, thank you. Where is the other mic? My friend, you're co-facilitator, so I'll suggest you don't sit. Okay, maybe before you come in, can I also have the Honorable Minister?
It's not really a response, but I think it's just, I don't know if should I call it a rider on what he's saying. I think the current trend now is on devolution. You should understand that we are operating within a framework of devolution. So whatever provisions in terms of managing monies, you have to take into account devolution. So devolution structures should be expensive. So I think that's a comment that I can just make.
Right, thank you so much for for that in terms of emphasis on the devolution and how it should link with share of proceeds, ensuring that the communities benefit. And I think also the funds are also taxed, the share of proceeds. It also takes note of the specific area where the projects are being implemented. So it will not be uniform across, for example. If a project is in Menez, then as part of that share of proceeds, we should also be engaging also with the Chirets, the Menez sort of community to identify areas where they can also benefit from this. But then that's for carbon credits. But for the broader National Climate Change Fund, I think that one, we take on board all the recommendations to ensure that there's representation. Then also we should also take also a criteria in terms of how we prioritize, what to consider first, but ensuring that we have a fair and balanced approach within the climate space. I think transparency and accountability is one key success factor that we should never try and ignore. So we will ensure that we take that route. Right, over to you, Sam.
In determining performance criteria for carbon credit, carbon trading rather, it would also be important to take into account the relative size or performance of the economy, for our economy. What you're saying is Zimbabwe and Germany are in two different worlds in terms of economic performance, and for that reason, what we can afford and what the European country can afford, we are miles apart, worlds apart. So when setting out performance criteria, I'm talking here of climate change performance criteria, that has to be taken into account. Where we are at the level of our economy.
Okay, thank you. We take notes. I think also as we develop these things, criteria, indicators, in as much as some are informed from global sort of frameworks and practices, we always try and customize and adapt to our own level of context. Of course, in a consultative manner. So we shall also reach out at the right stages to then say, this is the thinking, then we get to a decision, to a discussion and agreement in terms of what works and we pursue that.
We are signatories to international agreements on this. So which means we are bound to comply with certain things. So it's important that we don't have a free hand to do certain things.
Yeah.
Thank you again for that emphasis. Yes, Rajman.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I was wondering, there's the carrot and stick aspects in the deal. Now, I was looking at, will there be a provision of a schedule of penalties and what that will entail? I think it will be very helpful to have that schedule as a standalone within the bill, so that ndotoziva kuti kana ndikangopisa marara zvisina tsarukano ndogona kubakwa nemhosva igobhadhara mari yakati. I think it will also help because zvinenge zviripo vanhu vanongotarisa. Then how do we ensure that EMA inondisunga vanoti the polluter pays kana ndanga ndichidira muna mucheke kusvina yangu? Then this bill comes into law. Handigone here kuzosungirwa mhosva imwe ruviri ndikatobhuroka. How do we ensure now that harmonization of what is within other acts of parliament and this bill when it becomes law? Because there's that danger that munogona kungosungirwa mhosva imwe ruviri kana.
Okay, thank you so much on that one. Maybe I will invite my learned colleagues to respond on that in terms of, but normally we ensure that there's no overlap. Please, can you give comments?
Thank you so much. I think Mr. Ndizana has already responded.
Because what we're trying to do is to make sure that there are no overlaps. The MIX operates where it operates, and this group coming in operates where it operates as well. Because what we were not trying to do was to say this becomes the supreme law in terms of everything that is environment related. We also understand, and I think it has already been mentioned, to say there are other pieces of legislation that essentially speak to some consent things. All we wanted to do was essentially develop a climate change specific view that was listed in our key aspects that are either captured properly in other views or other NCF, or it's essentially in new components that we have never dealt with previous. So we don't really feel like there's going to be a danger that they will be jumping. But in any event, our law does not allow for increasing individual to be charged under 2 different days for the same offense. So we didn't say this act will come in and become override all the other laws that we have. So you have nothing to worry about that.
What about the schedule?
Yeah, the schedule they will be part of the act. The schedules, just like the statutory instrument that we have on carbon trade, it comes with all the schedules, with fines, penalties, procedures. Okay, thanks. I'm just being reminded that to remind you that maybe from the province, I hope someone is taking note of these additional discussions that we are having. Because also at some point we need to have a record of the discussions that transpired, as well everything that was shared, and the response is nicely captured so that when you have a full draft, or maybe when it gets to Parliament and they come again on the same subject matter, you should be able now to check, this is what we discussed, this is what we recommended, and you see now whether it has been taken on board. So let's also have a note, maybe through also the Office of the Provincial Secretary for Provincial Affairs. You submit to them, then they also have it on record in terms of the province's contribution to this process. All right, any other, I'm not seeing any. I made a proposal, yeah, we have the last two, then we discuss the proposal on Principle 8. If we cannot have feedback, then we take it for the next round of consultations. So I have 2 hands here.
Thank you. My contribution is around a very sensitive issue that was raised by our first presenter on the gender mainstream and maybe people with disabilities, rather, to say. But my response, I have to start with a caveat to say my viewpoint could be honest but mistaken. It simply represents my viewpoint to say I suggest that it has to be gender mainstream and inclusivity, because inclusivity, it encompasses all the marginalized groups, be it those with disabilities, be it other minority groups. So I suggest that we would change it to gender mainstream and inclusivity. Then whenever we mention anything to do with equality, I suggest that we also have to consider equity, because they work in tandem.
Okay, thank you. I think this is personal view. which I think if you're going to respond and comment on the same, don't make reference to him. No. Make reference to my submission. Yes. All right, let's have the next one. Okay. All right.
Okay, I want to write on the point that has been raised by, I don't know, Mr. Wu. We as a group, we at that point, we said at the same time, especially the board,
I can just speak louder. Right. It should comprise of technical people who can do cost-benefit analysis, especially on carbon credit trading. We can end up being a carbon sinking country. Like, opening a new irrigation scheme, it disturbs the carbon sinks. But at the same time, we should have cost-benefit analysis. It's better for us to open an irrigation scheme, validate at the extent of carbon trading. But there's really need for us to be very careful. Let's not just see the man in carbon trading at the extent of.
All right. Yeah, thanks for that. I think, we're taking notes in terms of the land use characterization, and also is carbon trading. It also goes across a number of other sectors, like the example that was given on transforming the whole transport system commercial. So that one will not have some issues. Even in agriculture, when you go into irrigation, each time you just open up a small land, then you do sustainable intensification, then you don't need to large expand the land, because where you're producing one ton of rainfed, then you're going to do 10 tons of irrigation. It means you may not need a whole big field. So let's have the last one, I think, the last hand at the back. Where's that microphone?
I would also want to comment on.
Oh, yeah. Then say, maybe we can hear you from you.
That's fine. I think just looking at it's unfortunate that we have not yet decided on the deal itself. But just on the principle, I'm hoping that the deal is there to really attract and say we want to look at climate change. Okay? Companies come out here and do the right thing. There's a benefit in doing that. So it must be encouraging, I think, the nation to say let's do that. Rather than being an authority, maybe there are penalties. So just that encouragement, which must be within the bill, to say we kind of marketing this. Come on board. But of course, there's the way that we must do business. I'm sure the bill will come up with that, because really it's about encouragement. Private companies come to do the right thing, trade in carbon credit. I did not capture that coming through, but rather just the rules and conditions, maybe the narrative of how things are good. My comment.
Okay. Even the microphones wants to rest. So we thank you so much. We take note of that contribution we have recorded. Then we have probably one last comment on principle 8. But then, like I'm saying, these are all submissions, which I think we will also then go sit down, and I just thought maybe it's good that I also share a different view from another group, so that when we compare the two and you see there's something trying to bridge the two proposals, there's a balance. So it's just to record your feeling also against what others have proposed.
Thank you very much. I would go with the proposal as submitted by Group 4. One, there is inclusion that excludes others. If you look at the history of our nation, our Constitution of 2013 specifically states that we should give equal opportunities to males and females. But you would notice that we have to go to the extent of giving proportional representation seats to women, the youth. Why? Although the Constitution speaks of inclusion, but we have never been able to include them, especially in politics for women, up until we had to specify that they have this specific seat for them. I don't know, after 2 terms, we had failed to include them, and we had to amend the Constitution again to extend that. Why I'm saying this? If we don't mention it by name, we leave it to different interpretations. And inclusion, who will be included? We can say, because we have young people, women, and people from a minority ethnic group, we have included. Then I can't come to you to say you have excluded, because you have a very valid reason that apart from males and females, you have also considered an ethnic group which is there. That's an inclusion. So why are we afraid of mentioning it by name? We are simply saying people or persons with disabilities and gender mainstreaming, which is inclusive. Maybe if we put it that way, we have to mention persons with disabilities because they have always been at the periphery with an afterthought. I think that's the motivation. I respect other people's views, but this is a very passionate and coming from deep down me. If we do that, we are able now not to stigmatize people and be able to move together. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much. I think the first time I met this gentleman was in this room again, discussing also issues around climate change, also amplifying the role of women, youth, people with disabilities, but then the title started with people with disabilities. So it's just that it came from another group, from someone also with a disability making a proposal. So it's another group. That's why I then said, let's just hear whether we can adopt one. So we will go with them as 2, then as we also go to other provinces, then also further consultations will then come up with one final one. So this was just to get the views and feeling of the house, which I think has been made very clear. So at this note, colleagues, I think this brings us to the end of this segment for report back and discussion, which I think was very active, and we have gathered as much as possible. I think this has been a good week. Almost in all 3 provinces, there's always a lot that's coming.